Alright guys, we're back with the feedbacks. We're on time this month. The theme...
Seriously on time. Like, on the ball.
We
got
were,
this.
how many weeks?
We were so
3 to
bad
4
last
weeks
time.
late. So we're sorry about that, but we got you in person, so we're going to jump over all the technical hurdles this time. The theme was exotic creatures.
Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Goodness.
we're ready to go. Yeah.
You guys like this theme. We got so many submissions for this one.
And they're all wonderful.
Yeah.
So we humbly apologize if yours was not chosen for this particular batch here. I mean, they're all really good, and it was so neck and neck. We just kind of had to quickly pull a bunch that were catching our eye slightly more than others.
And
That's really what it came down to.
Yeah, I think there were also some that were like the creature was cool, but there wasn't a lot of like composition or illustration things. And so we tried to pick ones that kind of like did a lot of things really well.
Yeah. We'll scroll them all at the end anyway, so everyone can at least see all the entries because they're all beautiful. Our drink of the critique session is the Dirty Banana.
Dirty Banana.
In the tape deck glasses, so these things
Very
are great.
Classy.
Yeah.
We're very classy, folks.
As far as they are tonight. It's a great cocktail.
Delicious, though. Thank you.
All right, so we'll go left to right, top to bottom, and
as we do.
Hopefully we'll give you some bit of information that'll be useful to you.
We are 4 drinks in.
Yes.
I think you're more. I'm 4 drinks in. He's a little more, so we'll
But we know this is how you guys love us, honest and fun. So we'll go through. This one is wonderful.
This
Anna.
one, yeah, like just the intimacy of the moment, like zooming in on this. I really like the illustration choice of putting it in the hand.
I love this piece. It's got a great composition. It's simple. It's straight to the point, and it's got a really fun creature design.
Yeah. Yeah.
My biggest thing with this is because you're so close up. Like generally, like the closer you go in with a picture, the higher fidelity and the more details with a typical illustration you have to hit.
Yeah.
And these hands aren't nearly as close to the fidelity of that creature.
Yeah.
And they're really close, so it's extra in our face.
And you get so much more detail in the creature that it's kind of strange that there's not as much detail in the hands around it. Because they're so like.
It gets blown out a little too much, like over here.
If you think of a photograph, like when you get that depth of field, like the things that are on the same plane of distance, when it's zoomed into that same area, they're going to be at like an equal level of focus. And you can take some artistic license as it goes away from the center of focus. You can lose some details and some fidelity.
Definitely.
But when, like, especially when the fingers get closer to the creature, you're going to want to have a similar level of focus.
It's a very narrow scope image, so the only thing really out of focus or out of plane here is really just like the green, which is very little in this picture. So I would say just bring up the hands in terms of rendering to the level of that.
Hands are hard, but they're beautiful. There's a lot there to like play with, like with the surface scattering of light hitting the skin, the different wrinkles and shapes. There's a lot you can play with. One of the things that catches me about the image is the local color. There's a lot of local color versus like temperature
environmental
shifting. Yeah,
stuff.
so like the skin, a lot, like you get a few areas that are a little pinker, but for the most part it all looks like a very similar color range. There's not a lot of temperature shifting in the light versus the shadows. The background, again, with the green, the creature with the blues. And you get like some really nice like contrasting blue versus orange in the creature, but you're not getting a lot of the temperature shifting between light and dark, which I think is flattening the image a little.
Yeah, what I'm noticing on that note too is that like, so you have like really blown out highlights on the left side of the hand, on the right side of the hand. So like, is the light coming from the left or the right? But then at the same time, there's none of the cast shadows and lighting affecting the creature itself.
Like it's cupped inside of this shadowed area.
Right? Like there would, I'm not going to do this well right now, but see, I don't even have a brush out. It's a brush tool, right? But like, would there be a cast shadow, not to like that terrible extreme, but like on the creature, and even the creature's own neck could cast like shadows on its own body. So there's a lot of, like you said, it's all local color and not enough like actual lighting information happening within context here. But otherwise, very cool.
Yeah. A lot of really interesting details in the creature that are very beautiful. The design is nice.
Thank you, Anna. Oh, we got Lester's piece. Look at this.
This one was fun. I like the feeling of this one, and I feel like The creature design is really cool, but also the choice of the environment really brings out the cool design of the creature.
Is awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I like? I like this warm light tickling the bottom of the branch there, and I kind of want to see that continued in.
Because also
It's
this
good.
like golden light on the tree is not golden when it's hitting.
It's like you got something really good here. Go further with it. Don't be as shy.
Yeah, like that. If something was hitting the tree and making it that warm, it would also, that golden color of the light would also interact with the fur and the creature in the same way. You can bring some of those golden creature colors into the creature, and it would feel like it was in that environment.
Like warm, to some degree or another, right? Warm up some of that light, hitting all that, and it's going to work to its benefit.
It's going to pull out the golden eyes and things like that a lot better.
Yeah, those are great, and they're a great focal point. But yeah, it'll kind of just wrap everything in a great package together when that's all integrated.
Yeah. And I think they actually did a really nice job of balancing the detail, like the areas that are in focus versus the areas that kind of soften out into kind of like larger shapes. Really nice. But yeah, I definitely I feel like where you see like on the underbelly and the ridge of the arm and stuff there, you want to see those golden lights playing into it.
A little more. But yeah, this is good. Like, I wouldn't fuss with anything else about it. You could get like different levels of sheen on like the hair of the coat, but I think it's pretty good though.
Yeah.
I do.
I really love the textures of the fur, like in the face and things like that. There's some really beautiful.
It feels exotic, which is part of the keywords that we're looking for here.
Yeah, and it feels like something I haven't seen before, which I really like. I think one of the things, like maybe just in the design, like the ears, I really like the way that the ears imitate the petal-like shapes around the head.
Is it too even for you, do you think?
Like it's actually, I think it's the center one, because that center mohawk shape, it doesn't look like one of the petals, but it also doesn't look like one of the ears. So I feel like there's something there that feels a little...
Maybe just bring it... Well, I can't do that with this brush right now. But would you say minimize that or bring it down a little bit more would probably help?
I even wonder if maybe putting some trim around the edge so it looks like there's a purple edging to it. So it's almost like one of the petal shapes. Because it's what is this shape on top of the head? Why does it have this big spike coming out of its head? To bring it into context with the rest of the petals, if it has somewhat of it doesn't have to go all the way purple like the other petals, but if it had in some flowers, the edges of the petals are different colors.
Well, yeah, where it's got the gradation within it.
Yeah. So it feels like a shape that makes sense with the rest of the design. I think that could be really nice.
That's a great idea.
But overall, I think the composition of this is really solid. It's really, it's impactful at a small scale, like a little thumbnail. It catches your eye. Yep. Also big, it catches your eye.
What we always look for. It looks good small. It looks pretty good big. That's a staple.
And I think one of the things is maybe the color of the eyes. I'd want to see that repeated in the image, which you've already started to do with the gold light around the tree and stuff. And I'd see that I'd like to see that repeated maybe on the rim lighting of the creature and stuff like that. So that gold feels a little more tied into the image.
Very good.
Beautiful.
Graham. Yeah, this is cool. Ooh. Look at this. This is wild.
Yeah.
It's what is that? It's like a peacock with a goat and an anteater.
Anteater, yeah.
Did I miss something in there? That's
it's a very interesting combination. It's very creative. I feel like it's not something I've seen before.
Yeah, the composition is wild. It jumps out at you. It's got its focus. There's a bunch of them in there.
I think one of the things that's throwing me off is I feel like there's a few areas that feel a little cut and pasted, like some of the leaves and foliage, especially towards the bottom, feel like they're not integrated fully. Especially this, it almost looks like you cut out a tree and glued it behind some fern leaves.
I'd just go further with that rendering a little bit, right? Push more light hitting some of those things even further than what's going on here.
Yeah, part of me feels like it just needs more time painting over the references that you've collaged together, which is really nice.
Because they collaged them very well.
Yeah, the overall structure of everything works really well, but they don't feel refined. They don't feel polished and painted as part of a cohesive whole quite yet. And I think when you push that, it'll be a little better. I'm also getting a little bit of, it lacks continuity because the creature in the middle is so saturated. Those blues and greens
these need a bit
so
more.
rich. Mm-hmm.
I'd even say lose the one right here too. Like be your best editor. Like I don't think it needs that one that's getting, its head's going right up this one's crotch. I'd just say cut it, because you have enough of the other ones, and then you bring in the nice color on this one into some of those, and it won't be compromised at all in terms of that readability.
I feel like pulling in some of those more saturated blues and greens throughout the image. Like I can see you put like a desaturated blue on the top of the other creatures, but I feel like if you were to pull some of those more saturated colors in a choosy way throughout the image, like be selective about where you put it, but you want to feel like that is not like everything is grayscale and then this is in color. You want it to feel like there's
too like
cohesive
one or the other right now, white and black with
and
more subtlety.
Yeah, and I think even like me, you've really relied on white and grayscale, like desaturated colors. I feel like just bringing a little bit of temperature shifting in the light. The light is very cold versus the few colors in the picture
Warm up the shadows.
Well, I was actually saying, if you warmed up the shadows, then it would also the light being cool would make the cool colors pop more. So I was actually going to say warm up the light, but I think you're right. Cool, if the light is
if you
cool,
commit to either, though, you couldn't go wrong. It's I think what we're coming to.
Yeah,
it's
like,
just so middle of the road.
There needs to be a temperature shift between the light and dark, but I do think cool light would justify how brilliant that creature is.
I am sold on the cool light. This is great. Thank you for your submission. All right, we got Halloween. I like this. This guy.
It's a fun dragon. I always love dragon images, and it's underwater. So the first thing that comes to my mind is
couple things.
Yeah, there's a few things, but the one thing at first is just that it's underwater. So when it's underwater, you get this like filter of color. Like air has a lot of times, the atmosphere has a color, and it's going to filter over all the colors in the scene. But if you're underwater, that effect is even more pronounced.
It's amplified.
Yeah, because the water is just much thicker than the air. So you're going to get this sense of a material between you and what you're looking at, and that'll affect the colors and the visibility of things. And in this one, we're getting, like, the reds feel red, which underwater, red is not going to read that way. Yellow is going to shift green, which it kind of has on the creature, but not so much on the light or the white face mask and things like that. So that's the color thing. That's the first thing that jumps out at me. But also just the loss of detail as soon as we go to like the neck versus the head of the dragon.
Right from like here to here. Without us really getting into it, like there's no detail. Like this is still like, I think what a lot of in a lot of illustration fields, this is still like first level, first pass, sort of like this got approved, but we never touched it. It needs a lot of work in various parts to get that fidelity of the whole thing up.
Yeah, there's not a lot of distance between where the face is and where the neck is. So that drop off in surface detail, like it's too quick. Like you wouldn't lose that much detail that quickly. So you want to feel like there's as much detail in the face, and there's only maybe a 15 to 20% reduction in detail, not an 80 to 90% reduction in detail between the face and neck.
The body is like at the same level that this background is, which is right. It's out of focus.
Way far away.
It's suggestive and it's appropriate for that. But then the body can't be on that same level, much closer to the head. And then I'd even say push the head further. The eye feels a little. I mean, there's like preferential things,
anatomy issues with
like
the teeth and eyes.
But the teeth, the eyes, there's some things that feel like could be optimized in terms of the proportions there to make like a greater sense of appeal. But it again, if you're designing this out of your head, it's like, okay, my opinion versus yours. But I do think like it could be more appealing, with the eyes moved up and smaller, and then you make some of the adjustments within the face.
Right, and you have like the eye, like it's almost a straight profile, whereas the nose is almost like
there's like
more
a weird
than
perspective.
3/4 towards us. So you want to really like hone in on the anatomy and get the face to feel like it's a 3-dimensional shape that is, like the 3/4 view in space.
And like even the anatomy of the diver.
Yeah,
right.
The anatomy of those legs in particular are very confusing. The way that human knees and ankles bend, that's
suggest it, and then you'd have to do like I say this like it's an easy thing. It's not an easy thing for anyone, but you need like a good solid detail pass and clarity, like all through that mid-ground level stuff. It's kind of in front of the dive. It's all so suggested right now. It needs like another bump in rendering.
And it's like the especially at a small scale, this image pops very quickly, which is nice. Like you've accomplished like something compositionally, but it feels like
once you get into it, it doesn't feel finished at all.
And I think one of the things is, well, okay, two things are making it feel unfinished other than what we've talked about is the edges. So particularly when you start looking at the way the rocks overlap, like everything feels very soft and fuzzy. There's no, like the only place that you find hard edges would be like around the face. Here. But these rocks and stuff in front of the neck those should be really cleaned up edges. And then the other thing is your value structure, for the most part, works really good until we get to like up above the neck of the dragon. So that, that whole area, like where the value structure of that light behind the neck and then the value is coming over the neck, none of that looks like clearly defined by the value structure. Those blend together and turn into mush, which you kind of have it. So this yellow light of the, I was going to say astronaut, the diver is... astronauts are cool too.
They are cool. But they go underwater.
Of the diver underwater, that yellow light should be giving us a lot of the surface information that we're looking at. And this lighter blue light from above the surface of the water should be much more minor. So the neck should actually be darker against that backdrop of lighter.
Silhouette. You got to see the silhouette. Like you said, it all blends up there.
Yeah. Very
good. All right, we got one from Captain Blue.
This one is fun.
Little low res. We got to keep it at this size. Even this is at 200. This was the original submission size we got, so we apologize for
anybody. At least it's not huge. It's easier, I think, if it's not like 1,000 times bigger. I really like the desaturated choices here, and the grayscale and the white. The yellow bird is really pretty. I kind of want to see that yellow repeated somewhere.
Yeah.
It when something is the only thing in an image, like when you think of composition, contrast brings focus. So right now it looks like the tree creature, I don't think it's an ant, but that looks like it should be the focal point. But the fact that the bird is the only yellow thing is saying maybe that's the focal point. And it's competing. So I think finding ways to bring that yellow into other parts of the painting. Maybe this skeletal tree creature has little yellow flowers growing on it, or little yellow pieces of lichen or moss that kind of bring that yellow into the image in other places. Could really help.
Yeah, like separating it all, bringing it together with some of those temperature shifts, right? Like getting like a little bit of that color. It's kind of similar to that other one where it's like too stark and lacks a lot of that the subtlety, with the halftone shifts where things go from light to shadow, and definitely could use more of that for sure.
Yeah, and I think like if you played with it feels like a very cool picture in general. So if the light coming through this foggy swamp is very cool and blue and gray, then the highlights on the creature being very cool, like bringing in maybe even just a slightly increased saturation of like a cyan or a blue color into the highlights. And it doesn't have to be everywhere. Just a few little passages with some beautiful brush strokes on the highlights that bring those blues into it could really, really play, especially if you bring some of those golden yellow colors from the bird, and just like playing with just those pops of color and shifts in temperature in just a few little brush marks in areas that matter could go a long way to making this sing instead of become kind of monotone and neutral and bland. And I love neutral images, but a lot of neutrality is in the subtlety and the little accents.
Yep, definitely. It needs to get pushed, like small little brush strokes that build it up. Because it needs a little more work in that regard.
Yeah, instead of going to white, like the white is beautiful, but if in certain places you chose to make
it's too
that
much
white,
right? It's like in our face, too much
just
white.
a little blue, a little teal, a little cyan, those pops of color against the yellow, and finding places to bring that yellow into the image would go a long way.
It would go a ton.
And this is a very minor thing, but it looks like the creature is supposed to be looking at the bird.
He's kind of looking at us.
Yeah,
right?
The way that you've placed the white, and I've made this mistake in paintings I've done where I want the irises to be white instead of dark. But what happens is our brain interprets the white as the whites of the eye and the dark as the pupil in the iris. So it looks like he's looking out of the canvas at us instead of the bird.
Which actually makes a bit more of a disconnect.
Yeah. And I think just reversing that, making it actually look like he's looking at the bird, unless there's a good reason to give him white pupils, I think that it's actually distracting.
Go with the Groot eyes. The Groot eyes. Mm-hmm. All right.
Oh, great.
Steal the stylus. You're doing great.
We got this.
We got this. Got this. All right. Next up. Susia. Oh my god, what is this?
So this one is a lot of fun. I feel like this is one where the overall composition, the impact of the image is really good. Like it hits you, it's really strong. And then I feel like the face, the when you zoom in and like some of the details of the face, it starts to like lose the impact that it has when it's zoomed out.
Yeah,
and
it looks really good.
Mm-hmm. That's a polish and like a finish.
It just needs more hours.
Yeah,
like a little bit of the grind.
Yeah, it's a polish.
But like structurally, right? It hits all the right notes, so that's like the biggest thing that most people slip up, and you got that really good.
Like the design is really good. It's just like going in and finishing it. So there's some choices that I think hold it back. Like I'm like the green around the mouth. Like if you zoom in around the mouth, you get like this green outline. It's very confusing. And I don't know if you wanted to make it look like he was eating leaves, but it would be much more effective if you actually had like a leaf sticking out of the mouth as opposed to like these strange like green outlines around things.
Yeah, just stick a leaf, half a leaf hanging out. I think these cast shadows from the leaves on the creature too kind of flat.
Severe.
It's too graphic. You got to go a little softer.
The trunk against the fur and
you
stuff.
can do that same thing around the whole creature itself to kind of build out more form as well. It needs all these subtle... I'm not hitting it nearly at this hour, this many drinks in, but it needs more of that form.
I actually, like, especially on this leaf under the tiny arms, I actually didn't even realize that was supposed to be a cast shadow. I actually thought that was just another leaf against the dark fur because it's that, like, blown out.
Yeah, it needs... Those shadows need to get addressed.
And you would think like the fur would have a texture to it, so the shadow would have the texture that follows the fur.
Yeah, because a lot of that gets overexposed in that kind of light situation. Like it's like Bear Grylls just found this thing in the wild, right? It's got the flash in its face, but you still want to bring out all that texture in those highlights because so much of it gets resorted to shadow anyway. You can kind of, it's not nearly as important in those areas.
And I think another thing that is holding this piece back is the quality of the edges. There's a lack of edge control. The edges on every area that you look at, except for maybe the leaves, which look lassoed. But the leaves of the trunk, the leaves of the creature, or not the leaves, the edges of the trunk, the edges of the creature, they look very like sketchy. They look like you haven't quite decided where that edge is, and you haven't gone in and like really defined that edge and painted it well.
Yeah, I'd also do like you'll see like, especially toward the edges on something like this, a radial blur on a lot of those outer areas helps a lot. Just on edges, that's a quick fix. It's not going to fix everything, but then you just erase what needs to be in frame and kind of, but like a lot of the edges can become subtly a little bit more softer, and that's a great way of easing in some of those very nitpicky compositional things. That'll...
And just like when you think of like making something look finished, like going in and cleaning those edges, like spending time to be like, okay,
like
the way, like if you look at the bottom of this trunk here, like if it like follows this line up, like that trunk is going to have a hard edge. It's not going to have like little flecks of light and dark and like it's kind of pushes this direction, pushes that direction. It's not going to be soft at all, especially with that fur behind it. and then like this feeling of like a flash hitting it. And I really like the saturated color choices of the green versus the pink versus the white. But I would still suggest like playing with...
They need some blue in there.
The temperature
some shifts
shifting.
In green.
Yeah, and like making it not feel like all the leaves are the same color green. Like the shadows will shift blue, the lights will shift warm, because from what I'm seeing, it's like we kind of got this blue dark sky.
Yeah.
So the dark, I would go into the cool range and let it disappear into those bluey shadows, and then the warmer lights coming forward, which will make those reds and pinks pop more. And I think also is like, just again, getting back into the face. I think the face is actually, it's the focal point of the image, but I feel like just bringing like more design into the, like, I don't understand with this like,
it's a little
white,
flat
like,
with the forms.
You get like this nose, but then what's this white shape under the nose? But like this is like a tongue that's eating something green.
Oh, I think this is what the mouth is. So this is holding it below.
It's not eating something white, right? So it's like the shape of the mouth that's like rimmed by green and red. That white shape of the mouth is very confusing.
But like you mentioned earlier, if you could fix a lot of that if you had like a leaf, hanging out like of that mouth, and even like a loose tooth, a snaggle tooth or something hanging out there will help that. It's just this shape in between that and the fruit. And
actually, when you zoom in, I can see that they've attempted to put in some fur details along the edge to soften it, like to actually give it a form. But you can actually still see where like the hard lassoed edge is, and it still feels
a digital
muddy. It feels like
artifact.
You could spend a few hours just going along the edges and refining them,
Bobby
softening
Chew
the
style,
leaf,
feathering
sharpening the messy areas. Yeah,
feather it out. Get the brush, get the smudger, work it in. It'll work great.
Yeah,
it's a good picture though. I like it.
Yeah, the overall structure of it is really cool. Like, it's definitely eye-catching right off the bat.
What's this? Do-noob. Everyone got such... D-noob, do-noob. People, you guys got creative names. My name's so boring. Hi, I'm Tyler.
Hey.
I like a filthy banana.
Dirty bananas.
I like dragons.
Dragons are cool, too.
So it's got eggs. It's good.
And I think there's a lot more bold and creative choices in the color. The way that you've like...
Yes, this one has those color shifts
like
we were looking for.
The leaves are not all the same shade of green.
Yep.
Just with like light and dark of that same shade. Like there's yellow, there's teal, like there's gold, ochre colors. Like there's a lot of color variation in the green. And that's really beautiful. And I think it lends a lot to the image. Actually, I'm kind of thrown off by how... the eggs are the same color.
That is
as
a big
the creature.
Thing. That is a big thing I saw. The first thing I saw.
Yeah,
it's kind of a crime.
They kind of lose their impact because they're the same color of the creature.
Yeah, they could be anything else.
They could be red. They could be green. They could be blue. They could be, just something to differentiate them from the creature itself, so they don't look like just like bubbles on the side of the skin.
Any color too, like just make them look different.
Cool. The blue is cool.
Just make them look different.
Yeah. And I actually really love like above the tail those leaf shapes there.
It's
like
super playful.
The brush marks that you've made there are really fun, and a lot of the brush marks through the foliage.
It's super fun.
I kind of want to see
a little tighter though, right?
Yeah, I want to see it tighten up, especially when we get into the face.
You're reading my mind. Right here, like this area that's about the even level finish that everything out with. Everything around it is, which is something we've said a few times in this feedback, but like you've already got it all up to that level, so now you just got to take like that little segment and push it a little bit further, so it pushes it off that background plane.
And even like the tail, like it when the vegetation is all like really brushy and deformed, that's okay, it's vegetation. But when we start to see the anatomy of the dragon, like this tail that goes behind it, that goes behind it, that's like it gets like thicker, and like it's thick here but it's thin here. You want to really get that shape to actually make sense and be more consistent. You want the neck to feel like it's solid, like it's the brush marks are messy, but the form underneath those messy brush marks is not messy. And that will go a long way to selling it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is cool. This is
a really cool piece.
All right, next up, Addie Jackson. Why is it? It's been doing that all night. It's Photoshop. Mama Slugwa. Look at that. I can hear the noises this thing makes in my head.
And this is really, like, I feel like a lot of the ones we chose, the composition of them, the illustrative composition is really impactful. Like, it catches your eye really quickly. But a lot of times they don't feel quite finished. And there's areas where the brushiness of this works, like these leaves and flowers down here.
This works super well for it.
It's really nice. But then there's other areas like these creatures down in the shadow, like the babies.
Yeah.
They don't feel, or even like this feels like it's not part of the same picture. It feels.
It needs a little more cheddar. Mm-hmm. A little more.
Yeah. So it's
inconsistency.
It's about choosing what areas become messy and what areas become detail rich and become a little more focused. And so you kind of got this messy thing going on for a lot of the areas. Yeah, you're doing good. You know what I'm
just they can't see where your finger points, so I'm trying to point where I can see where you're pointing, so I'm trying to highlight that. Co-op.
You're doing great.
You're doing great. All right.
So, but then like this is all messy, but then we get this like dark shape in the this corner, and it's not messy at all. It's very clean, but it's very simplified. And so it's like I feel like there's a mismatch, whereas like this is all beautiful and brushy, but then this is like very cartoony like and solid.
This needs to get applied to this too.
Yes.
So to be unified.
And then I feel like these and the little babies and
babies.
The big creature, they need to come into focus a little more, especially the babies. But even the face of that creature, it needs like
a little texture in the light,
like highlights on the chin,
little
and the
texture
nose.
right in here where I'm pinking this thing up.
Yeah.
And then you could even knock back some of that further in the shadow, and it'll work just great.
Yeah, it's a solid illustration. The composition of it is solid. It just looks unfinished. It just needs a few more hours to like paint those babies and paint that face
3 to 4 hours, you could wrap this thing up, and it'd be great.
Yeah, and even like just getting rid of the outlines on this corner shape, this dark corner shape. Oh yeah, and tying that edge in.
Yeah, I'd
really
just
nice.
open that up a little bit more.
So it doesn't compete.
Yeah, it just was like too much. And this is all good. And then you just touch that up.
But, I mean, as far as just the composition and illustration, I think you've done a really good job of balancing complexity, but also unifying it in a very readable image that you immediately, your eye goes where it's supposed to go. It's beautiful.
It's fun. I like seeing it. Like, you can see some of the drawing coming through. It's almost like a watercolored mix with what's it called, color pencil.
Yeah, and I think that's what's this corner with this dark bush
stands out from it
because it's just a solid chunk of color. There's no variation. There's no sense of brushiness or edge or anything like that. It's just like here's an outline dark shape, and it's competing. But yeah, like as I said, just put more time into the creatures themselves, and you'll get a lot. You could even lose some of
it doesn't even need as much sky up there. Like you could just have
simplify
like that nice little
so
window.
Your eye doesn't keep going up there.
A little too loopy, but that's super nitpicky because it's very good.
Yeah, it just looks like it needs more time.
Woo! What?
This one's fun.
Mickey Da? You want to take a swing? Sorry.
No.
Sorry, this is us being legit with it.
I'm terrible with pronouncing things.
I'm always on that.
Mickey doll. I don't know.
Anyway.
Mickey doll?
Thank you.
Micalda?
Thank you for coming in. We did our best. We're not making fun of your name. We just can't.
I'm making fun of myself and my inability to interpret things.
I like this guy. I mean, this has got super intense contrast, which is fun. The composition works. These eyes are kind of creepy in a very charming way. I do like a lot about this. This is like such a friendly little...
So one of the things that immediately, like when I'm looking at the creature versus the eyes in the background, the creature is so playful with the color choices and the pinks and the greens, like it's so saturated. And then when I look at this creature in the shadows, it looks much more generic. Like we just got these kind of glowing yellow eyes, and red nose. And I'm kind of like, part of me is like, what if the eyes were pink? What if the eyes were magenta? Like, what if it played on some of those colors in a little more creative
in
way?
Here?
Well, no, like these eyes up here, if those were not so generic, like if it pulled in some of those pinks and things like that, so it was like a little more unexpected, I guess. I think that could be a lot of fun.
These come off like I think I originally interpret them more as like leaves, but the more I look at them, they're kind of more like insect wings that are.
I think they're like camouflage. My thought was like it's meant to look like leaves. Like I don't think
I'd clarify that though, right? Because like we both kind of took that a little differently.
It doesn't look like when you think about creature design. If you think about like logically, what purpose does this feature serve? And they don't look functional in the sense that they don't look like they would lift the creature off the ground. They don't look big or strong enough to overpower the mass of the creature.
The tail.
So then it's camouflage.
And the tail would like
counteract that
entirely. So like the design is at odds with itself.
Yeah, yeah. So some of the like creature design.
Someone called Terrell Wishlet.
Yes, exactly. It's like think about the ways that the creature fits into its environment and these exotic features that you're giving it. What purpose do they serve? And again, so if it's camouflage, like there should be things in the environment that have like these bright green leaves with pink flowers.
It's a little too alienated in that regard.
Right. If it was in an environment where that made sense, instead of something that looked like a typical green forest, you know, it would make more sense. Lean into the alien. I mean, you've already got this strange kind of alien-like creature, so how could you bring that into the environment?
Yeah.
And the predator as well.
Oh.
And
it's a meerkat.
So, in like some of the other things I've said, another focus I'd like to look at real quick is the surface quality. So if you look at the fur and the surface quality on the leg, it's really nice. You've got some really beautiful passages of the way that the fur is interacting with the light and shadow. But then when you get to the face, it gets very flat and blown out.
Really flat in there.
It's like it just goes to white and you lose... I forgive you.
Thank you.
You lose some of the beautiful qualities that this little
here.
Back and leg, like this is a less important part of the creature.
It's it's more developed.
It's so much more visually interesting than the face, and it's almost like you were scared to go in and paint all those beautiful textures and shapes into the face.
Do it. Just go for it.
Yeah.
I would say too. This is good. I like it. I'm gonna shut up. I know when to shut up. I like it. All right, Kate. I can say Kate. I like that.
Yes, that's what we can pronounce.
My blunt.
I'm gonna have a dirty banana.
You better, because I got a blunt like American tongue, and I'm really terrible at names. This is cool.
This one's a lot of fun too. I love the color choices, like this green and red, almost like poinsettia colored.
And I kind of like that.
Dragon.
There's a little bit here to interpret, because like I don't know where it ends and where it starts.
Which is kind of like when you get into the idea of it camouflaging in.
Yeah, like I'm buying into it.
Yeah, it feels like it would camouflage into a jungle. I almost want to see like more leaves and stuff around it.
A little more of that out of focus, little bits of light peeking through here and there. But this is cool.
That being said, like I feel like there's so much here that feels unfinished. The red flowers, anywhere I look in the picture, there's not a single flower in the picture.
I thought I hit the brush. Sorry.
There's not a single flower in the picture that feels like it's thought out or designed or painted. All of them feel like here is a red blob where a flower goes.
The thing with those are they're very easy to reference, and so many artists out there do such beautiful render. Like they're things like faces and hands that even in like fantastical settings and stuff, there's a certain level of expectations that the viewer is going to have on something like that, and they kind of have to work a little harder than some other areas to meet those standards. Mm-hmm. Like, and the flowers got to look like really good flowers.
And this one, it's like you've got the flowers are kind of the point. The fact that this looks like
they're red.
This dragon looks like a piece of vegetation that's blending in with the leaves and flowers, but the flowers look like mush. The only part of the painting that looks like you've really spent time on finessing is the face.
Face looks great.
But then it's also like when you're looking at the anatomy, you're looking at some strange things where the neck actually gets thicker as it gets to the face instead of thinner.
Yeah,
Which,
right
if
here.
you think about anatomy, the structure around the shoulders where all the muscles are, that's going to be thicker as it, even if you're looking at the creature coming forward in space, like it's coming towards us, you're not going to get that much of a distortion in this small amount, because it's tiny, this small amount of distance of where the neck is coming forward versus back. So what ends up happening is it looks like it has this very narrow shoulder, very narrow neck that suddenly like balloons outward into the head. And so you want to make that feel more anatomically thought out and designed. I would even like, this neck would be like cut in. Like
it would be. I was knocking out the highlight that was
to
unneeded.
Try and hide it, but yeah,
unneeded way back there. But yeah, like this, it's like it's gonna get thinner and then probably like a little wider. But
and
yeah,
if you look at things that have really long necks like that, you don't get like a humanoid shoulder, like a wide shoulder range. You get almost like a shoulder that will like lead into the neck, like as more of like a V shape rather than like a broad shoulder with a long neck coming out of it.
It does seem like the anatomy of this, even initially it was like, okay, I don't know what it is, and that was kind of, but like it you'd almost have to know more than you're showing the viewer in this case, because it's like it's still too questionable in too many places. Like I don't know what creature in reality that this would be based off of.
Well, if you look at birds, I think
is it entirely bird like kind of like an ostrich up in a tree?
Yeah,
or
if you
something.
think of like anything that has a really long, I think of birds. If you think of something that has a really long neck, but you look at like the neck kind of tapers upward towards the head, and it kind of like has a soft sloping into the shoulders because it's got to support that long mass, and the head is actually really heavy. Like when you think of the bone structure of a skull and things like that, so you're going to want to support that at the base. And he's kind of done the same, or she, I don't know, but
it's Kate, I think, right?
Kate? Oh, okay, so she's kind of done the same thing with the arm, where like when you get up towards the hand it's much thicker, but then when you get to the elbow again it's really thin. So it's like you're reversing in an anatomical way, you're reversing where like the parts would get bigger versus smaller. So if you look at like most arms, it would get thinner towards the wrist,
then
and
it gets wider.
Yeah,
I don't know if I
towards
can say like
ankle.
wider, thinner.
Our ankles or our elbows.
Anatomy lesson.
So you just want to think about some of those things, but the overall like sense of the image, the color choices, the composition, again, like a lot of these that we've chosen for this one, like the immediate impact of them is really strong, and it's in the nitty gritties that you really need to like hone in and fix the image. The fuck did you do, Tyler?
All right. Now it's going.
No,
I'll edit this all out. It's good. So.
Sure you will. I've heard that before.
All right. We're here with the next challenge. We were talking on Monday Night's Hangout. You guys should come sometime with Zhao Fencing.
And she had some good suggestions. She said that she would pick the next challenge for us, and she sent us a few suggestions. And this was the one that really appealed to both of us. I think
this is fun.
Pretty equal. So we're going to do creepy but wholesome, or wholesome but creepy. So you could choose which one to lean into. But she said take a scene or scenario that would normally be considered wholesome and make it creepy, such as a family meal or bedtime stories. Or, on the other side of the spectrum, you could take some creepy ideas, characters or creatures, and make them do something wholesome, like roasting marshmallows on an open fire.
So wholesome.
And it's nice, we wanted something spooky for the Halloween season, and I think this is a lot of fun. So.
And she's going to join us as a guest judge. I don't like calling us judges, but she'll be here critiquing with the feedback.
Giving feedback.
And she's really good. She's super good. So
I'm
excited.
Work. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So we'll make this do like a month from now. I don't know the date right now.
Well, it's like the middle of
the end of October.
We'll
October
aim
25th.
For Halloweenish.
Yeah, October 25th. Let's make it there. The links are in the description. So join the Discord, and that's where you'd kind of put the submissions. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Check out Jess's stuff too as well. That's linked below, and have a great day. Hey folks, I'm adding this whole little bit here after the fact because I was looking through all the entries again, and I do genuinely think a lot of them are so wonderful. I thought I'd just weigh in, give my 2 cents, even though some of them weren't picked, by Jess and I earlier. Again, it doesn't always attest to the overall quality. It was just like, we were feeling that in the moment, and yeah, there's a lot of great pictures here, like from, Azami here. This is cool. I do think, I'd work up the image a bit more. It definitely feels like particularly first pass, as we often say, in the waves, and in some of the background. Like there's parts of it that definitely feel unresolved. There's an unevenness to it, and I think just pulling up the contrast on that head a bit, having cast shadows on things, and being more decisive with the light overall, that's going to help quite a bit. This is absolutely stunning, Annie. I think this is quite wonderful. It's got lovely color palette. Maybe like there's parts of it, like these hanging things, that I just think the picture probably be better without. Personally, you have great little effects in here. You have a lot of cool things integrated. You have shallow water. Again, there's a lot to absolutely love here. Again, this is one of the better detailed and painted images of the whole lot. It definitely feels like maybe like on this side with this, I kind of open that up a little bit too, a little bit more. It's kind of like very dense with brush strokes and with foliage. I think just kind of simplifying a lot of this picture will honestly help it out further. But again, it's really well done. This is very interesting stylistically. Apero Belta. It's cool for sure. I don't know if it's stylistically always something I would pick. But the drawing here is handled pretty well. I think the colors and the composition definitely need a little work, but it's certainly very interesting. I like the creature itself here, Arikado. Again, very beautifully done. I think, in particular, Jess would want to see like a little bit more with the environment and the overall composition, but nonetheless, I think this is handled pretty well, and I like the painting aesthetic of it for sure. Hey Bean, this is fun. It's definitely got a good structure to it. Literally pretty good perspective. Nice sense of lighting. Maybe what like I do on a piece like this typically. This is kind of dividing things a little too down the middle, I think, personally for me. And then I would have swooped the camera over, like almost like literally the camera kind of being photographed here by a guy standing on that walkway, kind of shooting up at this moment. It just worked kind of like a little pulled too far back, I think. Aside from that, every texture in this is kind of rendered kind of similarly. I definitely would keep working on materials. This is fun, but it's too dark. It feels really underexposed. It needs finish. It needs light to kind of create a bit more of that interest. But thank you, Chopstick Honeybee. I like that name, by the way. This is really fun. Anello's art. I like the colors. It's a little bit hard to read, especially when you get it like a bit smaller. I think a lot of the darker shapes kind of blend together. But it's not bad. Like it feels like parts of these aren't getting affected by the light or the water at all. But I think there's other parts of it, like this creature here and part of the background, that I think are handled very, very well. But yeah, I think this is wonderful. I do think a little attention to like how some of these materials separate from each other, like the coral to the creature to like parts over here. It all kind of has that samey kind of feeling. Again, it's a material and texture thing for me. This is fun. I really actually like the composition on this. Donnie on the floor. Welcome back, Donnie. Really good move with the color comps. I think this is definitely probably the right choice to make on that. I think just, again, upping the contrast a little bit in some of these areas will definitely help. I like the subsurface scattering you have going on there. And then maybe just like a little bit more detail overall in some of these areas I think will help. But yeah, overall though, like structurally, I like it quite a bit. Hyperdynamic cake. This is fun. Yeah, it's like maybe like a little too loud in places. Like everything has got like a very bright, intensely saturated kind of feel to it. Where I think like you have some emphasis of lighting here, but I'd push that lighting a whole lot more. Get the bounce light. This definitely needs some ambient occlusion. I think the whole painting is devoid of it. It would help quite a bit. And then compositionally, I think it would need a little work to get like the character standing off the bottom of the comp and stuff. But aside from that, maybe because it is so busy, I'd find little things like maybe like parts of the background, parts of this stuff that honestly could use a little bit of simplification just to really emphasize this. Oh, this is fun. This is like a muscle newt thing from Jake here. I like the storytelling you have going on there. I think that's wonderful. But again, it feels very unfinished, and the lighting definitely needs some work, as this as a whole feels very flat, as it's not being affected by the light in the scene so much, or the lighting in the overall environment. Do that, and then kind of work up the details of everything. Like, see, it's like very brushy and unfinished in the water and stuff. Again, look back to that second piece that we were talking. Like, do you see like the clarity there? That's what your piece needs. But thank you for submitting, Jake. We did Kate's, we did this. Luna Sideri. Sorry if I butchered that. This is cool. I like this epic sense of scale. A little unevenness with, like, you can almost too clearly see like that the walls have been like photo textured. The parts of the ground are photo textured, but then where parts of it feel like a little too painted. Again, for most eyes, it's probably fine. But I think for to keep pushing for that higher level, like you're clearly doing, and you're doing a good job at that. And have to be blended a little more. Like these feel almost kind of like cardboard cutouts of canyon walls rather than canyon walls. So they need a little more dimension and a little more integration. But the creature itself is pretty cool. I think the light could be pushed a little more on that, but yeah, wonderful. Nathan. Alright, this just seems like it was the sketch for an idea that wasn't submitted. So I just, like, you have a cool idea here. Try to budget your time so you can finish it and submit it for us. Pixel Man. This is cool. I honestly love the setup of this. It's kind of got this cool psychedelic, like this is kind of my color palette. Almost a little too even. Like, I'd say, like, if you're going with the center composition, find some ways to make it a bit asymmetrical. It's just a little too expected and down the middle. So if I am going to align the figure, the character down the middle, one of the cool things, find some way to offset the lighting a little bit, or offset some of the surrounding elements a bit more. Sci-Fio. And yep, here's our plug right there. He's got some more art. This is, I like the design of it. I think for me it's just like the execution of it and the rendering. Like you can see you genuinely have really good drawing here. But again, like almost like the lighting and how it's painted isn't personally working for me. But I love the colors, and I actually really love the idea. Oh, Rafa. This is spooky. This is creepy. I think the drawing needs a little work. It kind of feels a little mushy and potatoey, and it definitely feels a little undone. I would definitely, clearly still you're still working on your craft. Just do some simple studies. Try to do them routinely. Do environments, do materials, do objects, do people, animals. Just do studies as often as you can and time them. Check some of my Instagram posts because I do cover that a lot. Woo, here we go. Ratanas. This is fun. It's a really creepy design. It's almost like too human-like in parts, but I know that's probably the intent. The edges. This definitely needs some harder edges. It kind of has this very kind of soft, almost like mushy-like look. And then, for me, the color palette with the lighting and stuff still it's like almost too soft and pastel-y in it's a kind of weird way. A lot of it's overly too warm. There's actually not a cool color here, so I think color temperature could help work this as well. I love the angle. I love the design of this. This is kind of cool. Really cool. Really epic. Separe. But yeah, really fun. It's almost like a mix of too many things for me. Like, it's design-wise, like, you know, I like, it probably would work best without this piece. Because this feels like the most alien of all of that. And maybe, like, changing the aesthetic of that tail. I like the idea of the tail, and it does match this. But, like, maybe the tail needs some of these feathers along it somewhere to integrate all. But, yeah, very cool. Jefferson, how you doing? Really cool. Like the drawing. The edges definitely need work. It definitely has a very unfinished look to it. I think you got to push the lighting quite a bit. Push that contrast immensely. It's going to help this piece pop out. And then just finish it up with the atmospheric effects and finish painting it. It'll look good. It'll look good. This is solid. The Silly Walker. Indeed, this again suffers similarly what I was just talking about with Jefferson. It's very kind of rough. Like, this is what a professional would mock up for the actual idea. Everything here kind of feels very placeholder-y. And that, like, okay, like, the idea is intended to be here and all, but then, like, nothing feels like it was executed on. Compositionally, it's getting a little crowded on this side. I don't really understand how big this thing is. I mean, I can guess, but I think with more clarity on the leaves, the bushes, and the river and stuff, like, the size of this would be a lot more clear as well. This is wild. This is terrifying, Diego. But thank you for submitting. I love it. I think they were going for something like a little more exotic overall with this, but yeah, this is cool. And again, a very wild camera angle. Tiberius, this is fun. It kind of is silly and playful, very crazy in design. It's fun. Get good edges and stuff. I think definitely just kind of pushing the material of this a little more. Like, see, parts of it are like kind of drawn where you're like still kind of latching onto that line art, but then other parts you're really pushing the lighting and the texture, so it's kind of like trying to almost aesthetically do too many things at once. So I definitely would be careful how you budget where you're putting your line, your mass, and your form. But thank you guys for submitting, and I'm happy I was able to kind of squeeze in a few last minute thoughts on these. Take care. Catch you next time.